Hello everyone, my name is Craig Parr. I would like to welcome you to my presentation, Compliance Through Understanding the Loan Underwriting Investigation Process and Procedure. This is an instructional program design process. So you may ask me, Craig, why do we need a training program? Simple answer, to stay in business and not face fines. With the introduction of new laws and rules, a finance company must follow specific steps to ensure compliance remains a top priority. Following the rules when we discuss the ECOA, Equal Credit Opportunity Act, underwriting criteria jumps to the top of the list. Are your people following the same path, or do each of them have their own lending agenda? This is the reason training on this becomes an essential part of following compliance. Companies must create a program that ensures each person follows the same guidelines. Most systems contain three basic elements: input, process, and output, and the application of these three elements is the heart of our instructional system. Hadell, 2011, page 22. Creating a training program involves steps to get to the other side. The areas that we will discuss include: who are we training? How will each teach this to our staff? How will we teach this to our staff? And what is our delivery method? What is the goal of this training? We're going to discuss the objectives of the class, which we know is underwriting, what types of sessions we will put into place for the learning, how to verify the information that's provided by a customer and its real-world application of the new skills. Finally, we will discuss the timeline and objectives of this class. So let's start with the all-important question, why do we need a training program? Simply put, when a group has no clear defined rules, just general guidelines on why they do what they do and how this is accomplished, training not only provides a clear path to understanding, but also shows anyone on the outside this company does follow defined rules. So with no clear defined path, what do? Simple statements would be, we change them. Therefore, as an early step, if not the first step in the instructional design process, is to identify the change that is requested and the different variables surrounding this change. Brown and Green, 2011, page 41. We define the direction the group follows to get to the other side. We get the employees to act as one when the information is presented, and this gets you a balance across the company. The uniform platform shows the outside and employees that each is expected to follow the same guidelines. We stop them from looking everywhere and understand the same path. Identical methods on each step at every branch, division, and customer that act the same way and look at the underwriting exactly the same. Most important is the company follows compliance to the letter and meets the requirements of the ECOA. Training session description. This course provides insight to both old and new employees on the process to retrieve information from a potential customer to underwrite a loan or process a rent-to-own contract. In following this process, an employee will understand how to process loan documents provided by the customer to input them into the computer's underwriting system. We then teach them to understand the reasons behind the information and how to understand why we need to collect that information. The students know where to find the information if they collect a piece of paper or electronically, what they are looking for, and where does this information belong. Finally, how do they process the paperwork and make sure when he or she inputs the information, they put it in the correct information. Finally, what do they verify, and what is the method for the validation of the material? If this is not enough and the employees cannot complete the verification, what can they do in place of certain documents? So the first question, who's our student? The basic answer, generally these adults are 20 to 21 years of age or older, hold a job, part-time or full-time, and want to complete courses as quickly as possible. Site. In a business environment, the same holds true. Some may be under 21, but for the most part, this is a basic demographic from the needs assessment completed. We know the people attending are employees, but we have to examine it further so we can teach the student better. Basic human wants and needs must be addressed before any instructional intervention is attempted. Brown and Green. In this presentation, we will look at different areas that include the employees age 18 to 65 plus. We know that they are 70 to 80% female and have high school and some college credits. We know as part of the needs assessment that they are required to attend. After all, they are employees, and this is a required course. So he or she understands that to remain employed, this is required. Finally, any bias, prejudice, or beliefs will vary by individual, but the one at the forefront, we always did it like this before, stands out. That is an area we must focus on his or her understanding of why the class is so important. So who is our student? What are the demographics continued? We continue to discuss the demographics of our employees and understanding why the classes are important. We discuss the human aspect, and most of the categories on this slide work from that information. While it is not the instructional designer's role to provide for each of these needs, it is in everyone's best interest to be at least familiar with how to gauge an individual or group's instructional readiness at this most essential level. Brown and Green, 2011, page 73. The instructor in this segment needs to learn about his students. After all, the company has them in a captive environment, so getting them focused and engaged means understanding the group dynamic. By knowing that Mary bakes cakes, you can attribute that into instruction to catch her attention. Physical characteristics include comfort levels of the environment. Did the employees eat a good meal? If not, providing snacks or drinks will offer assistance. Room temperature. Comfortable chairs also play parts in this scenario. Think of a hot room for a couple of weeks in a metal folding chair. How well does that employee read? Finally, how well does that employee read? Do you want any written materials to be incomprehensible to the pupil? Big words need to be removed from the materials. Terminology and topics to be avoided include anything that is sensitive to an employee in the environment, taking into consideration that physical and intellectual ability, cultural and ethical background, and socioeconomic status can affect how people perceive and process information. The universal design for education movement seeks to create environments and instructional context that provide equal access to the resources necessary for academic success. Brown and Green, 2011, page 75. How do we provide the information to the employee? In our next section, we will discuss the methods for delivery of the new training. We also need to discuss the length of the instruction. Following the understanding from our chart above, the classrooms and training include a combination of lectures, presentations in both PowerPoint and video, group work, drill and practice, role-playing, and spontaneous learning groups. This provides an enjoyable and fulfilling environment for each based on each person's modality. Level 1 consists of classroom training on basic information. Then Level 2 incorporates the information learned in Level 1 with hands-on training involving the use of sample documentation. Also, the training will include fraud identification in the verification process. Finally, the third level of training will encompass on-the-job training to allow the employee to interact with actual customers at a branch level. Each step, the employee undergoes a review to gather information about the course and a final test at every section. The training will use a combination of online manuals, videos, and PowerPoints to facilitate training at any location. FAST approach to instructional goals. Following the FAST approach to instruction moves from the idea to the accomplishment. In this case, that involves the collection of the documents, the examination of the documents, and finally making decisions based on those documents. From this point, the goal of the instructional designer moves to the detailed goals. What are instructional goals? So why do we set instructional goals for our class? Simply put, setting goals and objectives is a critically important part of the instructional design process. Brown and Green, 2011, page 97. In this setting, the goal involves taking the employee through the steps to understanding the loan process. The instructional goal defines we want our employees to be able to accomplish this when he or she is done with this course. While this training, the employees will understand the following goals. Provide the training to understand how to underwrite a loan. This removes any bias from the processes and promotes fair lending. The class teaches the employees to analyze the information as opposed to the people applying for the loan, meaning they look at the paperwork, not the employee. Finally, this promotes uniformity across the entire company. Every person working on a loan underwriting follows the same methods. The goal here is to meet any compliance standards set forth by the company, state, or federal agency. Following the ABCD approach. According to Dick, Carey, and Carey, once the goals are established, a subordinate skills analysis should be conducted in order to determine the specific performance objectives for the instruction. Each step involves a particular understanding of the goals. Brown and Green, 2011. As the slide shows, this defines a person learning the material. A defines the person learning the material. B defines what the business expects at the end of the course. C defines the setting and circumstances of the class. And finally, D defines the acceptable standard for passing the courses. Each level plays an integral part of the steps required for each level of the class. Objective 1 is the initial classroom training. The defined approach to the goals of the Level 1 course include the following ABCD requirements. A. This group contains new employees and those needing a refresher course. Every person has graduated high school and may have had a prior job as customer service representative or a manager. Their ages generally range from 18 to 40 and 80% are female. B. Once the employee passes this phase of training, he or she needs to understand the basic requirements needed to make a loan. Along with this, he or she will understand what different methods they can use to obtain information to qualify a customer for a loan. C involves the majority of this section of training will occur in a classroom environment with visual aids, PowerPoints, lectures, discussions, and the company computer programs. And then finally D, an employee cannot proceed past this phase until he or she understands no less than 85% of the material presented. The courses provide a series of segments that include critical thinking skills and the basic patterns for verifications on every customer. Employees will be engaged with activity that includes observing, speaking, writing, listening, in combination with critical thinking. This allows the group to engage the material and the instruction. The overall goal of level 1 involves a complete understanding of the basics to underwrite a loan. Prior to continuing in the entire course, each person must pass a quiz with an 85% score or higher. The individuals are allowed to take the test up to 2 times. The waiting period for the second consecutive test is 24 hours to allow the employee to study further for the test. Failing to pass this section requires the employee to retake the course. An end-of-course assessment completed by the employee discusses the points of training. This allows a formative analysis to take place on the material and the instruction. Objective 2, hands-on instruction. Defining using the real world. This section deals with employees using company tools and actual documentation to define how to underwrite a loan. The defined approach to the goals of the Level 2 course include the following ABCD requirements. The trainees who proceed, number A, in training remain the same group are limited to those who show the ability to think critically and have a strong, happy personality. B, after this phase, the trainees should be able to determine sources of information gathering and how to identify if the information is trustworthy. The trainee also holds the ability to make a decision based on the information provided and verified. C, this portion of the training occurs in the classroom and uses current and past customer files interwoven with fraudulent files. The information provided teaches the employee how to audit a file and determine what, if any, information could or should have been investigated and if the loan was made per policy. D, employees should show a full grasp of the underwriting concepts and be ready to apply the methods learned in a real-world situation. Through this segment, as shown in the slide, the employees will be exposed to teamwork to promote collaboration on information. After all, 2 minds are better than 1. The class also introduces corporate and outside technology to add to the validation of the information. This course, like the last, requires a passing score on a test of 85% or better, and the 24-hour minimum is also placed on a retest. The employee only has 2 opportunities to pass this test. At the end of the course, an end-of-course assessment completed by the employee discusses the points of the training. This allows a formative analysis to take place on the materials and the instruction. Objective 3, On-the-Job Training, OJT. Finally, the employee enters the Level 3 objective, On-the-Job Training. The goal of this segment involves taking the lessons learned in the first two courses and applying this to real world in a branch situation. The ABCD of this section includes the following. A. During this phase, each employee passed the initial testing periods and has a full comprehension of the underwriting process. The trainee at this point is ready to begin real-world situational training on the job. B. Once the trainee advances beyond this point, he or she can operate in a store environment with minimal supervision. C. The setting in this segment requires the trainee to transfer to his or her designated branch and work with the customer and employees at that branch. D. Once through this training, the trained employee should be able to underwrite loans and pass spot audits. By this point, the employee puts their critical skills to the test by making actual underwriting decisions with a supervisor. The employee fully understands the use of critical thinking when looking at customer information and must be able to show competence in the decision-making process. This will occur in the branch, and the employee will face spot audits as part of the verification of their knowledge. Once again, after this segment, because this is conducted at a store level, an end-of-course assessment completed by the employee discusses this point in training. This allows a formative analysis to take place on the instruction at a branch level. This provides insight into the level of management staff of each store and dictates any further necessary training for the employee and the trainee. Implementation and timeline. The timeline for the design of the class should not exceed 6 months. The first segment brings in both audit and compliance personnel to ensure that the program material follows each division's guidelines. Implementation also requires the creation of the training materials based on input from the individuals in each of these departments. This includes the PowerPoints, videos, and manuals used during the training sessions. Once the entire group agrees on the materials, the initial training for the instructors begins. This step allows the company to send a group of trainers out to the districts to facilitate the information in the same manner. Once instructors finish the initial training run-through, the key employees come into the training regiment. One important part of this instruction with key employees facilitates the buy-in of the new program. This creates a single company voice to echo the importance of uniform understanding. Also, when anyone asks a question, he or she communicates the new methods in the right manner. Month 1 and 2, Design. The first 2 months of implementation involve a series of steps. The first starts with class designs based on a 3-week time frame. During this phase, each person on the design team needs to understand the direction of the training and materials required. This involves the collaboration from the first step from the instructors, auditors, compliance department, and key employees. The group will collaborate weekly to make sure the timeline is met and each agrees with the week's outlines design. Each division is allowed his or her input into the material given to the new employee. Once the material outlines are created, the group will once again meet to review the information to assess and assure each understands and agrees with that design. Once the creation of all sections finishes, the material outlines will be reviewed once again for any final changes. The creation discussions include online access to materials, tests, and the final online review for the class. Once again, the final review by the entire team ensures the material will meet the group's requirements. Month 3. Month 3 involves the design of the support material, including any PowerPoints and visuals. The plan will follow sections from the original boot camp training materials that are carried over to the new program. This involves reviewing prior training sessions to get the basic information and then creating material based on the discovery from the first 2 months. The month will also include designing the activities like the games, Jeopardy, field visits, marketing, low ropes courses, competitive shopping, and a host of others. Once the group completes the scheduled design, then we begin the next phase, and that's the rollout. Now that we have designed the full schedule, this is the point where the training begins for key employees. This includes bringing in compliance and audit. As each person goes through the new course, he or she will complete a formative analysis to determine the content fits the training goals. Any final adjustments would take place at this point to make any corrections to the program. Assessment and evaluation. To assure the employees understand the course at each level, the employee must pass a test. The information is quizzed in written, oral, and on the job by numerous individuals at different levels. The key aspects confirm that the employee understands the processes involved in underwriting. At the end of the class, using SurveyMonkey or a like system, the participants will evaluate the course and offer feedback. This offers designers the ability to make any needed corrections from the learner's point of view. The key determines the employee understood and learned from the training and feels confident that he or she will make the right decisions when underwriting a loan. There are 3 major evaluation types that you use as an instructional designer: learner, formative, and summative. Brown and Green, 2011, page 137. The learner and formative are done during and at the end of the course as described above and during the presentation. The use of each method allows the company to process how each student felt about the class and if the program requires any changes. The compliance officer conducts a final summative evaluation to make sure the requirements for state and federal laws meet the class criteria. This assures each method not only teaches students to understand the material, but also the company can present this training program to a state and federal agency. This shows that compliance remains an important part of the company mission. The overall corporate objective or overall objective of this class involves teaching new and existing employees the methods to underwrite a loan and meet compliance guidelines when completing these tasks. Each step involved learning to properly lend to a customer by examining and validating the information provided. The design objective involved creating a program that was easy to follow and provided an outline to reach a specific destination. In addition, following this basic outline allows future changes due to corporate or regulatory requirements. Basically, this creates a groundwork for any future programs. The design also provided a venue to access the information at a later date if a person needs a refresher on his or her knowledge through the internet. In summary, the objectives of training provides a guideline for people to follow when learning a subject. In this case, understanding underwriting and how this relates to compliance. With this company, proper lending remains the focus, but the training in any subject follows the same basic design. This presentation not only showed how to create a compliance training seminar on underwriting, but also laid the groundwork required for any class design. Putting down an instructional foundation requires the knowledge to follow each step and create a plan so others learn. The idea that this process remains limited to this class is false. Trainers can develop additional courses and classes just by looking through this outline. This PowerPoint confirms that as an instructional designer, any course can be developed. This is a foundation for training in every area of any company or school. This is the process involved in instructional design. Thank you for your time. If I can answer any questions, let me know.